today's book launch event, Rohingya Camp Narratives, Tales from the Lesser Roads Traveled. Let me to apologize. We are 15 minutes behind the schedule. We'll try our best to finish the event on time. We have been waiting for our Honorable BOT Chair, who will join us shortly. So before he arrives, let us start our event. Let me to request honorable guests to be on the podium now. I'm requesting our Honorable Vice Chancellor to be to escort all our guests, starting from Professor Dr. Meghna Thakurata, Professor Dr. Tasneem Siddiqui, Ambassador Shabir Ahmed Chaudhary, Mr. Johansen Bander Kalau, Professor Imtiaz A. Hussain, Ambassador retired Tariq Karim, and Professor Tayyibur Rahman, Dean School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. Thank you, honorable guests. We are happy to have all of you today in today's event. Besides this presence here, guests also joined online through Facebook and live. So at the beginning of the event, let us pay respect for our national anthem. Please raise for the national anthem.
আমার সোনার বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি চিরদিন তোমার আকাশ চিরদিন তোমার আকাশ তোমার বাতাস আমার প্রাণে তোমার আমার প্রাণে সোনার বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি তোমা ফাগুনে তোর আমের বনে গানে পাগল করে মনে হায় হায় রে ওমা ফাগুনে তোর আমের বনে গানে পাগল করে ওমা প্রাণে তোর ভরা খেতে কি দেখেছি আমি কি দেখেছি মধুর হাসি সোনার বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি কি শুভা কি ছায়া কি স্নেহ কি মায়া গো কি আঁচল বিছাইছ বটের মূলে নদীর কূলে কূলে মা তোর মুখের বাণী আমার কানে লাগে সুধার মতো মরি হায় হায় রে মা তোর মুখের বাণী আমার কানে লাগে সুধার মতো মা তোর বদন খানি মলিন হলে আমি নয়ন ওমা আমি নয়ন জলে ভাসি সোনার বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, we are happy to have in today's event as chief guest, Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen MP, Honorable Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. But unfortunately, as we all know, Dhaka is right now hosting a D8 summit, and Honorable Minister will not be able to physically join us here, but he will join us through online on time. At the beginning of the event, we want to honor our honorable guests who joined us today, and our students, from our students, will give them some flower bouquet to them. So now I request to give floor to Professor Dr. Meghna Guha Thakurata, Executive Director, Research Initiative Bangladesh, and who is also an honorable reviewer for this book. For the second reviewer, Professor Dr. Tasneem Siddiqui, Chairperson, Department of Political Science, University of Dhaka, and founding chair Ramru. For Ambassador Shabir Ahmed Chaudhary, Secretary West, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. For our special guest today, Mr. Johannes van der Kalau, UNHCR representative in Bangladesh. All our guests are from IUB, but we want to also honor our editor of the book, our own Professor Imtiaz Hussain. Thank you very much. So we are waiting for our Board of Chair Trustee, Mr. Abdul Hai Sharkar, but whenever he will come, he will join immediately, but we are going to start the program. And to take rest of the program, may I now request today to give welcome remarks and to moderate the whole program, Professor Taibur Rahman, Dean, School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, IUB.
We are extremely sorry that we are late to start the event. Honorable Chief Guest of today's ceremony, Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Special guest, Ambassador Shabir Ahmed Chaudhary, Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Mr. Johan van der Klauw, UNHCR representative in Bangladesh. Distinguished discussant, Professor Tasneem Siddiqui, Chairperson, Department of Political Science, University of Dhaka, and founding chair Ramru. Professor Meghna Guha Thakurata, Executive Director, Research Initiative Bangladesh. Editor of the book, Professor Imtiaz Hussain, Professor of Global Studies and Governance, and he is the Director of Center for Pedagogy also. IUB Trustee Chair, Mr. Abdul Hai Sharkar, Trustee Qayyum Khan, our Vice Chancellor Tanvir Hassan, PhD, Ambassador Retired Tariq Karim, Director, Center for Bay of Bengal Studies, IUB, Dr. Shahnaz Hossain, Acting Head of the Department of Global Studies, chapter contributors of the book, my colleagues in the faculty and administration, student, ladies and gentlemen, salam, and a very good morning to you all. On behalf of the School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, IUB, I welcome you all to today's launching ceremony of the book, Rohingya Camp Narratives, Tales from the Lesser Road Travel. This is a book volume edited by Professor Imtiaz Hussain, and it is published by a renowned international publisher, Palgrave Macmillan. Congratulations to Professor Hussain and all the book chapter contributor on their publication. This is the fourth internationally published volume in the 5-year Global Studies and Governance Department history. The fifth one is forthcoming in December this year. This book contains 13 chapters authored by a group of distinguished authors from independent university and the University of Dhaka. It feels good to see that 10 out of 13 chapters are authored by IUB researchers. And most of these colleagues are from the School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. It's worth mentioning that GSG student Subaita Fairuz has contributed chapter 2. So let's give a big hand to Subaita Fairuz. Congratulations. This theoretically informed and empirically rich volume explored the social, economic, political, environmental, and security implications of more than 1 million refugees in Bangladesh. Due to time constraint, I will not go into the detail of the content of the book. We will listen to an in-depth and scholarly discussion on the book by our panel of distinguished speakers. Nowadays, university rankings are a familiar phenomena in higher education all over the world. It has developed a measurable indicator to measure the performance of universities, and the competition is global. I believe that this publication will boost IUB's research strength. Publish or perish has become a mantra for any academician's life these days. Hope that this publication will enhance IUB's reputation as a research active institution of higher education, both at home and abroad. It shall make IUB more visible to its stakeholders. I believe today's book launching event and its recognition will also inspire other faculties to come forward and devote more to doing high quality research in future. I thank all the distinguished guests for their kind presence and contribution to this book launching event. We are truly thankful and inspired. I wish the event a success. Thank you. We want to be done in 75 minutes. We are already late, and I am doing the job of moderator also. And you know, in order to maintain time, please don't get hurt. I will, you know, give you reminder, and please don't take that otherwise. So now, I will request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Tanvir Hassan, PhD, to kindly come to the podium and deliver his remarks on the book. So the next 5 minutes is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, namaskar, and good morning. Good morning. That's like it. I'm pleased to be here for today's book launch titled Rohingya Camp Narratives, Tales from the Lesser Roads Traveled. Before we proceed, I would like to take a moment to give special welcome to our chief guest who is joining online, Dr. Abdul Momen, MP, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. He will be joining us online, as I said. And we have some special guests, Ambassador Shabir Ahmed Chaudhary, Secretary West, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Johannes van der Klauw, UNHCR's representative in Bangladesh, our reviewers, Professor Megnago Thakurta, and another guest I'm very pleased to have on campus today, a person I knew from my childhood. She is like my big sister and a good friend, Dr. Tasneem Siddiqui. Thank you. Our moderator, editor, and other speakers from our very own university, Dean Tayyibur Rahman, Professor Imtiaz Hussain, a prolific publisher from the IUB faculty end, and it's it's a distinct privilege for me as a vice chancellor to work with a professor like Professor Imtiaz Hussain. I hope that he continues the good work. And Ambassador retired Tariq Karim, and of course, the students and the faculty and staff. This kind of events fit into IUB mission, part of it which is to achieve the robust goals of higher education through a mutually beneficial relationship between community, government, and the university. This event illustrates the relationship and both stated goals and gets pushed robustly through the presentations and reviews. This event also connects with several other unique IUB pursuits. The Center for Bay of Bengal Studies, and they also look at the refugee track, and we are also privileged to have the wisdom and service of Ambassador Karim, who heads that center. Then we have globally renowned center called ICAD, International Center for Climate Change and Development. They also look at the camp treatment of erosion, sanitation, water supplies, and environment in general. And the newly founded Sachin Center for Multilingual Excellence, where the focus is on small ethnic minorities or small ethnic entities and the language that are getting lost in the process. We have started a noble project at this university and one of a kind in this country, where we are trying to go beyond the defined three small entity languages and going beyond those government declared one and doing our part in contributing to this whole cause that the government has started. Then we also have the Center for Pedagogy, which is again run by the illustrious Professor Dr. Imtiaz Hussain. And they also have similar things in the pipeline. They publish these and in the pipeline. Now, this is not in the script, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about something. I don't want to spill it out today because I'm saving them for my town hall meeting on next Thursday. But when I saw a student publishing here, I would like her to stand up if you would. And let's give her a hand. Because I'm prouder to have her publish in this book more than my professors. It's the professor's job. They do it for a living. And the fact that you stepped up should be an example for other students. Thank you. Be seated. And with this, I want to make this announcement. Again, I'm spilling a little bit today, which I was not planning on. After hearing her story, I thought I should. I think we are putting away a decent amount of money, officially earmarked for undergraduate research, just like what you did, so that our professors gets incentivized to take up these students into a meaningful project, which leads to a meaningful publication. And the focus, and I don't think too many universities in these countries will earmark money for undergraduate research per se. We are trying to make small steps to make changes, and to have a vibrant research community, we need the students to be involved with the faculty members. So that was a very encouraging news to me as a vice chancellor to see a student publishing along with the professors. I would now take the moment to thank the organizers, especially the SLASH, School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, particularly the Department of Global Studies and Governance for arranging this event. My special wishes are with all the IUB faculty and staff members, actually faculty and students who contributed to this book. As note to our guests and organizers, I have a board meeting today, which I'm still trying to get ready for. So in case when we started late, I wanted to apologize to you and get your permission that after that stipulated time, I have to excuse myself. There's no offense. I have some clerical work to do ahead of the Board of Trustee meeting. So if you would pardon me that. And thank you again for coming. Joy Bangla.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring speech. And thank you for letting the audience know what you are doing and the research initiative that you have undertaken. And I believe that under your leadership, the university will go forward. Thank you, sir. Now, I am supposed to invite Mr. Abdullah Sarkar, Chairman BOT, but he is not here. So we will invite him once he is here. Now I invite Professor Imtiaz Hossain, the editor of the book, to give the audience a synopsis of the book. And just to let you know that Professor Imtiaz has been a mentor for IUB colleagues since he joined IUB. He is a serious researcher and an excellent editor. And he is an inspiration for all of us. Thank you, sir, for showing us the way. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I have, you can hear me, right? Honorable Foreign Minister, our Excellencies, the special guests, our respected Vice Chancellor, our esteemed reviewers, guests, faculty, and students. Out of the 13 chapters, I don't have much time to explain much. I will want to single out some of these specific authors here. And I want to begin with chapter 2, lecturer Obaidullah Al-Marjuk. Would you please stand up? He brought Lexus and the olive tree from Thomas Friedman's famous book and planted it in Rakhine, one representing globalization, the other localization. Thank you. And Ambassador retired Tariq Karim picked up on that and did what he does all the time, leave a very deep footprint. I would like to move to Professor Shahab, Jahangirnagar, International Relations. And what he is doing is, by connecting religion to security in Rakhine, he's alerting us something like that could happen in the camps or elsewhere. We need to be aware. I want to move on to Professor Lailufer, also of Dhaka University, and soon to be the chairperson of international relations. What she has done is looked at the international system and seen disorganized hypocrisy and political medievalism. And what she has done is alerting us and telling us this is why the Rohingya issue is not being resolved. I want to move on to Professor Niloy Bishwash, also from Dhaka University, International Relation. He assesses intersectionality. And this intersectionality is creating an otherness that is reshaping the identity of the Rohingyas. And we need to be careful. I then want to move on to two current heads of departments in the SLAS framework. No. Assalamu alaikum, Sarkar bhai. I was with the two current heads of departments, both in the SLAS family, and each has written something very powerful in a chapter we don't hear much. It's about women, about protecting women. Dr. Marufa Akhtar from Global Studies has basically looked at women as sexual objectives, whereas senior lecturer Raisa Rashika, who I might add is probably the most fluent author I have seen in this building in the English language. And she has written quite a lot of the COVID impact upon the Rohingyas. Let me move on to our dear Subaita, who complements these by looking at human trafficking. And that's a chapter that is collecting a lot of mileage because the issue is collecting mileage. My own chapter looks at basically humanitarian innovation. And these are innovations that I personally believe can help civil society. So the big question remains, why is that not happening? What can we do to accelerate it? Let me move on basically to global studies lecturer, Jessica Tatila Suma, who is now doing a PhD in University of Texas. And she basically places indigenous and international education together to find out some kind of a solution, especially for the large population of children in the camps. The final chapter is by a lecturer from social science and humanities, to which senior lecturer Marjuk belonged. And she is in Simon Fraser University, which is also where Subaita, our undergraduate then, graduate now, she's working for the Bangladesh Enterprises Initiative at this moment. And she's going to Simon Fraser University in Canada for her graduate work. But Ibtisam is basically looking at the past and exploring the future. And she pays some attention to Bhashonchar. And is that some kind of a solution? We don't know, but we're looking. What all of these studies say together, that we have a minefield of possibilities of Bangladesh leadership in Kutupalong. Whether it is education, innovation, whatever it is, gender, we should take more initiatives and show that and cultivate it further. Let me conclude by just 3 comments of my own.
Cannot hear.
Another.
Hello.
My second comment is about the reviewers. Both of them are very established scholars in Dhaka University and Bangladesh. And they have really spread the name of Bangladesh abroad. And they're working with institutions that are becoming iconic. And I want to thank you for all your very valuable comments. My salute to scholars like you. And finally, I would like to say this event would not have been possible without the very hardworking junior faculty and students we have in global studies. You will never see it, but you're in the deepest recesses of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Imtiaz Hossain, for giving us a synopsis of the book. I am going a bit back, and now I am inviting our BOT chair, Mr. Abdul Hai Sarkar, to deliver his speech. Sir, please. Oh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished speakers here and Dr. Imtiaz, another gentleman sitting here I'm not very conversant with, but suddenly I've been asked to speak some few words in here. But anyhow, what I understand is that the issues we are going to discuss here today, Rohingya camp narratives. This is very burning issue now right now in Bangladesh. And a lot of Rohingyas have taken shelter in here. And their future and now what will happen in future very difficult to understand now, because now they are shifting to Batanjor. So, and Bangladesh cannot take this kind of load. So I don't know how the world community is taking care of this. But anyhow, I'm really feel privileged to be here to attend this kind of August gathering where very important issues are being discussed and addressed maybe. The Honorable Foreign Minister will be here with Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, the Special Guest Ambassador Shabir Ahmed Chaudhary, Secretary West Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Mr. Johan van der Klauw, Anchor representative in Bangladesh. So I wish you a very good morning to all of you. And I'm very sorry for being late a little bit because of the traffic I have to come across. So there is I'm late. But I wish that this discussion meeting would produce the result it has really meant for. And I also thank Mr. Professor Imtiaz Ahmed for writing a book on Rohingya camp narratives. And this is the demand of the time, I have to say. And I have I don't have any chance to go through the book, but I understand that a lot of important issues are included here. But I plan to read it in my next possible opportunity when I get the book. Then I could talk much better if I go through it. But then I hope Mr. Imtiaz will give me a book copy, then I can read, and next time when I have chance to speak again, then I speak on that issues. So with this few words, I once again regret very much for the delay in attending this meeting and wish very successful conclusion of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Your presence is important and we are truly inspired. Thank you. We are very happy to see that Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, MP, our Honorable Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, has joined online. Thank you, sir, for finding time to give us some time to listen to us. And so please give a big hand to our Foreign Minister. Sir, we will be running the session, but we have heard that you want to listen for some time and then you want to speak. So please let us know whenever you feel comfortable to speak, please. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Now is the time for the reviewers to make their comments on the book. And this reviewer we have two distinguished reviewers here. And each reviewer is requested to kindly finish in 10 minutes. First, I invite Professor Meghna Guha Thakurata, Executive Director, Research Initiative Bangladesh, to make her comment on the book. Madam, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor and to be a first reviewer of this very excellent book. First of all, respected Honorable Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen MP, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador retired Tariq Karim, Ambassador Shabir Ahmed Chaudhary, Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other guests, Mr. Johannes van der Klauw, my fellow reviewer, the Vice Chancellor of the Independent University, as well as respected participants and the ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. First of all, let me just congratulate, big congratulations to the writer and editor, Dr. Imtiaz Hussain, for producing such a very, what shall I say, unique book. We have seen many writings on the Rohingyas after the 2017, but this is a very unique book. And why it is unique, that is what I would like to discuss, basically. My thanks to all the writers and their contributors to this book. Excellent contributions, very well referenced and up to the mark international standard, or else Macmillan would not have, Palgrave would not have produced it or published it. So thank you to all the writers. But because Dr. Imtiaz Hussain, in his introduction, wrote such a brilliant conceptualization of the whole book, I feel that I should discuss a little bit. In discussing that introduction, I think we will be able to know the values of this book thoroughly. And that is what I would like to do in my review. And so this is, in the introduction, there is, Dr. Imtiaz Hussain has brought in a kind of a multiversal, I would say multidimensional, as well as multiple layered analysis of these situations and why, and the reason why he called Rohingya camp narratives tales from the lesser roads traveled. Because the lesser roads traveled are a combination, a gray area between two various binaries. One is, he talks about, there are writings on high politics, which means state-centric politics or state policy-making analysis. On the other hand, there is the low politics, which is not really low, but very crucial at the empirical level of societal dynamics that are going on. And it is between the two and the traveling between the two that makes this book, that makes it a lesser road travel, because we know that many in our disciplines in the university, they are security analysts, and then they are societal analysts, sociological analysis, and somehow sometimes the twain never meets. But in this book, that the two has been brought together in very intricate, in-depth analysis of various angles, and that is what makes it so special. I would say that, so in Dr. Hussain actually explains it as high politics, low politics, but also he talks about the theoretical underpinnings of these politics. So one is those who takes the more security-oriented analysis are the realists, and the ones who are taking a much more societal level analysis are constructivists. And how these two perceptions bring in both the welfarism as well as the security aspects of the problems, and those constitute the gray area. And it is in order to go forward, we must address this gray area, is what the book is all about. And so in variously, he has also said, in this book is clustered, the articles are clustered in 3 parts. One talks about the pre-camp aspects, or the pre-camp period, you could say, when the Rohingyas in 2017, how their plight originated in Myanmar, how they were displaced and how they came to Bangladesh, and the kind of identity politics they had with them and how it is changing. And then there is the camp level narratives, which talk about innovations, his own article, humanitarian innovations in WASH sector, also about welfarism and how welfarism sometimes takes over the war-making aspects. That one is on looking at security issues and how sometimes welfare and security issues collide with against each other, and sometimes one overtakes the other. In the camps, the welfarism tends to take over the security issues, but then again, we know that security is brought inside the camp as well through the various articles on trafficking, on the plight, the dire, miserable conditions of the Rohingyas themselves, etc. But what is more interesting for me is actually the post-camp narrative, because that is still undecided. And I will read out one sentence from the introduction, which actually leads us into a very, quite an exciting terrain, you could say, and some maybe justification for another of this wonderful volume 2 maybe. And that is, you have said in your page 4 that could the seeds of a far brighter future picture be sown to replace the grim refugee discussions we have gotten used to? Should actors play a lesser or greater role than the very issues constituting civil society? Must the long-term proclivity of Rohingya welfare get overshadowed by the here and now absorption priorities? These open up what we call the lesser roads traveled, as much by readers, writers, analysts, and policymakers for new insights as camp residents have done for their survival. I think it is a very important sentence which encapsulates the whole volume, but also leads us to future rethinking of actually what the future should be like, to envisage the future possibilities. We know I, for one, have been part of some discussion at the South Asian level, South Asian and Southeast Asian. You know, one of the interesting, you have talked about humanitarian innovations in the camp, but I also see policy innovations coming up in our horizon. Like before, we were very much entrenched in the South Asian regime. South Asia, we are very much part of South Asia. But soon as we started hosting the Rohingyas in our own land, we find that Bangladesh is increasingly becoming involved and engaged in the Southeast Asian or the Asia Pacific region. And that is an important terrain that is still is a gray area and still needs some kind of proactiveness, which you said in your talks. We need to have some kind, it has possibilities of proactive policymaking that can when we look at the South Asian regime, we see Delhi being very much a center, and Delhi talks about look east or act east as it is now. But isn't Dhaka in a better position to act east than Delhi? This is a question that could raise some issues of future policy making in our foreign policies. And this could perhaps lead us to some exciting horizons which we see coming. It is definitely there in the waters that we have around us, the Bay of Bengal, the Asia Pacific region, our networking with east of Bangladesh has become much more realistic and much more, you could say, much more materialistic as well. Before it was just a challenge, but now it's a possibility. So with these words, I would like to conclude and again congratulate all the writers as well as the editor, and of course the support you got from your university. And thank you very much for this book. It will, I'm sure, have a truly long shelf life. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I know how difficult for a reviewer to review a book that consists of 13 chapters. So we have not done justice to our reviewers. Our apology. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your thoughts and insight. Now I invite Professor Tasnim Siddiqui, Chairperson, Department of Political Science, Dhaka University, and founding chair, Ramru. Professor Tasnim Siddiqui.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you. I think it's already good afternoon. Yeah. Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. A.K.M. Abdul Momen MP, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Vice Chancellor, Professor Tanveer Hussain, and the authors, editors, and members of the audience. It is a great pleasure to be present in this august audience and to speak a few words at the launching ceremony of this important volume. Though not my area of expertise, as an active citizen of the country, I try to follow development centering the Rohingya refugees. In a world that has become increasingly hostile towards others, refugees, migrants, and minorities become minorities. Bangladesh's admission and extension of hospitality to more than 1 million Rohingya refugees has received a huge global accolade. At a time when interest of the global actors on Rohingya refugees is waning, aid fatigue is setting in the repatriation process has virtually stalled. This book explores the largely uncharted ground of the lived experiences of refugees in the camps of Bangladesh, where they are likely to be trapped in the foreseeable future. I congratulate the authors for the rich essays that this volume contains. It covers a wide array of issues ranging from ethnicity, identity, security, human security, foreign policy, religion, camp violence, intersectionality, gender, humanism, children, and education. Most importantly, it starts with an incisive introduction by no one less than Professor Imtiaz Hussain, who I consider as a great knowledge worker that Bangladesh has gained. In migration literature, I would like to say this is a situation where diaspora giving back to the country of origin. Today, I can see the diaspora linkage in more pronounced with the Vice Chancellor who taught for 35 years in the US. No less important is the fact that our honorable minister is also part of Bangladeshi diaspora. So we are gaining. It's a gain-gain situation that we are seeing in our education institutions and also in the policy making. There are 13 articles and many aspects have been mentioned. Due to paucity of time, I will limit to share my thoughts only on a handful of them. The piece on identity and intersectionality by Dr. Niloy Biswas provides some refreshing insights about how the Rohingya identity is constructed, on one hand, by the majority Burma in Myanmar and the local host communities in Bangladesh. Dr. Biswas deftly applies Amartya Sen's contention that identity cannot be solitary or narrow in nature, since multiple forms of identities exist to represent someone's self. I was particularly impressed by his effort in revealing how Rohingyas are perceived by local community as ferocious, unruly, greedy, polygamous, disrupting the labor market, being source of disease, being threat to local Buddhist minority, being engaged in drug dealing. From non-traditional lens, security lens, we can say that securitization through Speech Act has been completed in Bangladesh. Time and again, he rightly asserts that such perceptions are not supported by empirical or scientific evidence, and concludes that this othering process of Rohingyas is a chronic manufacturing of intersectionality. I also found the piece on sexual, gender-based camp violence piece by Dr. Marufa Akhtar another important contribution. Rich in information analysis, she reminds us that 52% of all refugees are female, and as high as 16% of the households are female-headed. She then lists the problem that women refugees encounter: early and non-consensual marriage, rape, beating, spouse abandonment, extortion, exploitation, trafficking, and detention. Enduring spouse abuse appears to be rampant, but curiously, instead of blaming their husbands, the victims often blame themselves, and in one instance rationalizes, "He can beat me in case I make mistake. As a wife, it's my responsibility to make my husband happy." From my gender lens, I must caution here. The author may appear to be emphasizing with the perpetrator, empathizing with the perpetrator when she writes, "Being stateless with limited movement within the confines of camp with little or no opportunity to work make Rohingya men frustrated." I would like to highlight this is where patriarchy plays its role. It successfully creates its hegemony, a brief belief system that hardship faced in other front justifies transferred aggression. The vulnerability of divorced and single women and teenage girls without partners to sexual exploitation and abuse is amply articulated in the paper. The essay on Cultivating a Lost Generation by Jessica Tertia Suma is likely to make a serious contribution to the incipient debate about what type of education should be imparted to the Rohingya children who are trapped in the camps and are unlikely to be repatriated to Myanmar in foreseeable future. Premised on SDG 4 of equal rights of education and reiterating the pledge to right to education in the Global Compact on Refugees, the essay reminds policymakers about their responsibility to ensure imparting primary education, encourage secondary and tertiary education, non-discrimination in accessing education on equal terms with protection of linguistic and cultural rights of ethnic minorities and alike. Very delicately, the author attempts to unreveal the tension that is associated in deciding what should constitute legitimate knowledge and how that is linked with Bangladesh's internal security considerations and political will. She argues that the wrong framing of education policy for refugees children may lead to grooming of a lost generation, creating conditions of aggravating poverty and accelerating violence, extremism, eventual sporing of non-state actors with hugely disturbing capacity. Ambassador Mr. Tariq Karim, in his article, Cutting the Gordian Knot, rightly identified that two solutions must be pursued simultaneously, one for the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh and the other for those who still remain in Myanmar. His recommendation on non-UN peacekeeping forces is also very important. I have things for Shahab Enam Khan's piece and also Lailu for peace, but I wouldn't go into those, but I can tell that they are, theoretically, they constructed their piece very nicely it fits in with other sort of papers very well. I congratulate the authors of all these important essays for sharing their research findings on these forsaken camp dwellers. I particularly think that the editor, our dear friend, Professor Imtiaz Hussain, should be thanked for putting the volume together as a follow-up of a big conference that took place at this premise that I was fortunate to take part. Allow me to say that I fully agree with Jill McDonnell that this theoretically informed and empirically rich volume makes an important contribution of global studies on governance, Rohingya scholarship. I must congratulate the Department of Global Studies and the Faculty of Liberal Arts for publishing and encouraging such an important volume. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam, for giving us a rich and comprehensive review of the book, and you have tried your best to focus on a number of chapters. Now, I will call upon one of our special guests, Ambassador Shabbir Ahmed, Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Government of the People Republic of Bangladesh, to deliver his speech. Please.
Thank you very much. Honorable Foreign Minister, sir, Dr. Shahnawaz Hussain, Professor Taibur Rahman, Mr. Tanveer Hassan, Mr. Abdul Hai Sharkar, Professor Imtiaz Hussain, Professor Dr. Meghna Guho Thakurta, Professor Dr. Tasnima Siddiqui, Mr. Johannes van der Klaw, and Ambassador Tariq Karim, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, I forgot to mention the faculty members and my very affectionate students. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. At the outset, I'd like to express my profound homage and respect to the greatest Bengali of all times, father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. May Almighty Allah grant him Jannatul Firdaus, that is the highest honor in the eternal life hereafter. I'd like to thank the IUB, the Global Studies Governance Department, to invite me in this very important event. As a matter of fact, when I attend this event, I just discovered that how little I know and how much there is to learn. As you know that this Rohingya crisis, it started long time back, but it reached its climax in August 2017, that is almost 5 years ago. And we have been struggling hard in all levels. We have possibly left no stone unturned to solve this problem, but unfortunately, to our frustration, we have discovered that it is not only solved, we don't know when it is going to be solved or if at all. But still, we have to keep our efforts going on. And I'd like to especially congratulate all the think tanks, all the students who have conducted their researches. And I would like to especially thank Professor Imtiaz to compile them and edit them in the form of one book, because this will help as a guideline to many of us, including the decision makers. Before I forget, I would like to request all concerned that if you can please provide some copies to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have a dedicated wing called the Myanmar wing, which was formed immediately after August 2017 to deal with this problem. And also some copies for the Foreign Service Academy, because the trainee officers, they are somewhere in between now. They have just joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so which means that now they are students, and at the same time, after some time, they will be a part of the policy-making organ of the government. So I'm sure that this compilation will work as a guideline, and in one form, so much information is available that all the concerned, all the stakeholders will be benefited from it. Now, one thing, because quite often, though I never worked directly in the Southeast Asia wing or the Myanmar wing, but indirectly or in various forms, I came across this problem. Just the day before yesterday, I received this book and I didn't have enough time to go through. I just had enough time to have a cursory glance on the headlines, and I believe that these are well thought, and especially those who wrote it, the researchers, they have taken a lot of pains and efforts to collect the data and the information and put them in the form of writing. So thank you very much. But now coming to the policy of the government, apparently it seems that it is a failure on the foreign policy of Bangladesh. But let us see what Bangabandhu said, that we are all familiar with the dictum of the father of the nation, that the basic idea of the foreign policy is friendship to all and malice to none. We could have certainly, as a sovereign nation, stopped the Rohingyas entering Bangladesh. We have the sovereign right to do that. In that case, what would happen? All that we are discussing wouldn't possibly have been here today. But we'll just overlook one most important aspect of human being. That's the human rights, humanity. We know what the consequences would be. So at the cost of our resources, our political disturbances, the disturbances faced by the local people, we let them enter. Though we receive support from most of the countries, but you understand that it's a very complex world. The international relationships are complex. The relations keep on changing based on the interest which always remains permanent and eternal. We know that what were the countries who supported our independence in 1971. After half a century, some of them became our close friends, even though they opposed our independence. Some of them, our relationship is critical, and no two countries have consensus on all the issues of their cooperation. There are differences, but that doesn't mean that only for one single disagreement, all the other areas of cooperation will be ruptured. So that is the basic principle. And this is where we have to draw our line. This is why the decision-making becomes very complex. Now, it's not an issue only between Bangladesh and Myanmar. I think we need to conduct further researches on that so that we can arrive at the appropriate solution, that there are superpowers behind Myanmar. This is why, and that is actually one of the reasons why we cannot bring about any breakthrough. So inshallah, with all our efforts, it's a teamwork and it's our country. So we all want the best of our country. So including the researchers, the stakeholders, the think tanks, and the policymakers. If we work together, then inshallah, we will arrive at the appropriate solution. May Almighty Allah help in our efforts. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Ambassador Ahmed, for your insightful speech. And we thank you for responding to our invitation on a very short notice. So you has inspired us. Now I will call upon our special guest, Mr. Johannes van der Klauw, UNHCR's representative in Bangladesh, to come and deliver his speech.
Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs, Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, we are greatly honored by your presence. Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Shabir Ahmed, Professor, the Dean of the School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, Vice Chancellor Tanvi Hassan, Ambassador Tariq Karim, Director of the Center of Bay of Bengal Studies, distinguished academics, reviewers, Professor Imtiaz Hussain, faculty members, students, researchers. It's really a great honor for me to share the podium as the representative of UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency here in Bangladesh, which is fully occupied with the Rohingya ongoing crisis. I also speak here on behalf of the UN ambassador, the resident coordinator, Mrs. Gwyn Lewis, who could not take up the invitation, and also my colleague of IOM, the chief of mission, Mr. Abdul Sattar Issoef. This is a very important book. It has been already highlighted by the reviewers. I could not do it in a more eloquent manner, and this introductory chapter by Professor Imtiaz Hussain sets out how important it is to bring together the policy analysis with all the various political, security, foreign aspects of the Rohingya situation, but also the societal, empirical analysis of what's happening on the ground. And let me share with you a very few thoughts, because we really need to have time for the Honorable Foreign Minister, who will take the floor after me. This book is so important also for us who work with the Rohingya, because it can help to shape the narrative in society about this issue. As it was mentioned, the Rohingyas have been here for decades in Bangladesh, but particularly since 2017, we have seen a massive influx of then 700,000 plus Rohingya, and nowadays we have more than 900,000 Rohingya in the camps registered. And this is for Bangladesh a burden, a challenge, and Bangladesh should not be left alone with this. As the Secretary mentioned, addressing refugee situations is collective work, is a responsibility of not only the host country, but the international community. And this is particular the case here for Bangladesh, which shoulders this burden more than any other country of a population which is not recognized by its own country of origin. That's the complicating factor. And if we want to address this problem, we need to address, of course, the root causes. They are in Myanmar, where Myanmar should recognize the Rohingya as its citizens, its rights, its access to services, its ability as a population to live a dignified and safe life. That needs to be addressed. So while we need to continue to support Bangladesh in sustaining this population here, we need to put all our efforts on addressing the problems which is in Myanmar, the root causes, and also where the solutions lie. The solutions are in return, and all the Rohingya want to return. In my 30-year career as a UNHCR official, I've never worked with a refugee population which was so keen and is so keen on returning. We need to keep this situation on the agenda of the international community. There seems to start to become a fatigue. We are reaching, unfortunately, the 5th anniversary of the latest massive influx, but let's not forget Rohingya have been here as refugees 30 years already. We have seen return movements, but at the moment, return, as was mentioned, is not any day feasible, and the latest developments in Myanmar, the executions, have shown again how difficult it is to get political change in the country, and that's needed. So we need to push for political dialogue, for unified diplomatic engagement, and of course, for continued work on the ground, which my agency and others do in Rakhine State, to reconstruct, to develop, so that on the ground, the facilities and the possibilities for a dignified, a sustainable life are possible for the Rohingya. But this diplomatic action, this political action, and this unified political action is needed. This book, coming back to the situation in Bangladesh, is so important also for us as UNHCR, because it addresses all the elements of a refugee population. It was mentioned by the reviewers, from a security, an economic, demographic point of view, protection point of view, and all these chapters in and by themselves are hugely important. I do want to highlight one chapter. It was mentioned by Ms. Subaita Farouz, because she analyzes the concept of security and human security writ large. And I want to say a few words on this, because the way the Rohingya situation is portrayed of late in the media, in society, is one of they are a burden, they are more or less equated by security problems, criminality, and then also, of course, the economic burden, the environmental issues. And this is all true everywhere in the world where you have a refugee population. There are these problems, and particularly in where refugees live in border areas, let's not forget that, where there were always security issues, traditionally, and criminality issues. But therefore, this book helps to get the narrative right, because it is, as was said, based on empirical research, on evidence, and it shows that on all these issues, there should be a much more nuanced view, and also a better fact-based narrative, not to equate the Rohingya with criminality, with environmental degradation, with economic burden. Yes, these issues are genuine and they need to be analyzed, but if you hear the reality on the ground, which the researchers have analyzed, and let the Rohingya speak, and how we work with them, we get a different picture. We see how a Rohingya refugee situation contributes to local economy also. We purchase loads of commodities and food on the local market. There's much money flowing into the local industry. The environmental issue, there's no better example where the host community and the Rohingya work together to be prepared for the landslides, the monsoon, the floodings, the fires, because it is unfortunately an area very prone to the effects of climate change, but where this joint work to reduce the risks and the damage of disaster is put in focus. So I want to congratulate again the authors with this book. We as international organization will make good use of it. We really recommend all the students to read the chapters in detail. We will do so. And we want to contribute to the work we do together in support of the government and the people of Bangladesh to sustain its assistance, its protection to the Rohingya as long as this is needed, while we do all this with the perspective of return. Everything we do in the camps and on Bhasan Char for the Rohingya and with the Rohingya is to keep them prepared for return. And we have to continue to work on this. And we also, as part of an international organization, part of the international community, will continue doing this. But we need to also, my last words, help to invest in this. While the Rohingya here in this, what we call resilience agenda, it was highlighted in education, in skills development, in providing a safe and dignified livelihood for Rohingya to continue to capacitate them for this return. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clow, for your speech. We have been enriched by your contribution to today's event. We are moving towards the end of today's event. Now I will request our chief guest of today's ceremony, Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen MP, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak on an issue. I would rather like to listen to the distinguished professors and researchers who have published a beautiful book, Rohingya Camp Narratives. Rohingya Camp Narratives, for you I show it to. It has a number of articles which are pretty in-depth and gives a general narrative about the Rohingya and how the good news is the Rohingya till today all wants to go back to their land of origin, back to Rakhine State. In this case, you see, we have been out when the Rohingya were being persecuted. Bangladesh, out of humanitarian consideration, opens its borders. And now, initially, the local people, also the host community, welcomed them. But it is costing them a lot now because inflation in the area has gone up. Job availability is shrinking. Rohingyas are taking over. And there has been environmental degradation. And, initially some global, many of our friendly countries were more generous in assistance. But unfortunately, as the time is passing, the need is increasing. We see there is a declining trend. Rohingyas are the residents of Myanmar. They have been, even the parliament members, even the cabinet members till 1962. But after 1982, they had been disfranchised. Rohingya issue tells us one story, that UN has been involved with the Rohingya for a long time. But these people are being deprived. There has been spread of venom of hatred against them for over years. And these international agencies did not bring those issues in the forefront. And there looks like some weaknesses within those groups. But the issue is here. Myanmar has a tendency to kick out their own people from time to time. They did in the 70s, and they did in the 80s and also 90s. But through dialogue and discussion, they took back most of them. In fact, for example, in 1992, out of 253,000 Rohingya, Myanmar government repatriated around 236,000 with honor and dignity. This time also in 2017, then when there was an exodus, at this time the number is too large, 1.1 million, initially 840,000, and then more and more coming totally now is 1.1 million. But Myanmar, our neighbor, they agreed to take them back. They also agreed to provide safety and security. They also agreed to create conducive environment in Rakhine State so that they can go voluntarily and with dignity. Unfortunately, fifth year is moving. Not a single Rohingya could go back. It is becoming very difficult. Now we have Bangladesh government has taken up this issue from the very beginning. They bilaterally, multilaterally, and also even Bangladesh government with the help of OIC went to this ICJ. And we got good verdicts from there, positive verdicts from there. But unfortunately, the Rohingya could not go back. There has been a lot of lip service, but not a single Rohingya could go back. This is the saddest part. The Myanmar is a member of ASEAN, and ASEAN group has been assuring us that they are also working with Myanmar for their safe return. We also involve China, who has some influence on Myanmar, and also we requested our neighbor India to help us out in the repatriation of Rohingya. China showed some interest, arranged some meetings, and in the meetings, Myanmar always says that this and that, but they never say they will not take them back. That's their public face, but we don't know their other face. So situation is very complicated. And this has also been narrated in this book. The situation is complicated. Our fear is currently the Rohingyas are involved out of frustration. Many of them are being involved in criminal activities, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and all the evils. And if this continues and such a large number of people with nothing, no future as such at this time, our fear is many of them will involve in extremism or terrorism. And we know terrorist has no borders, they have no faith. And if there is radicalism, the fear is that it will not stay within this region, it will go beyond. The whole region, there will be uncertainty in the whole region. The development trajectory that we are in, those may be suffered. So it will affect not only Bangladesh and Myanmar, may affect beyond. And therefore, all countries in the neighborhood, they should take special initiative for their repatriation. Particularly the ASEAN should take a special initiative. We have been discussing with them, but so far, other than the assurances, nothing concrete came. The saddest thing, in the 70s and the 90s, Myanmar took them back. On those days, they were under economic sanction. But since 2017, both investment and trade of Myanmar with our friendly countries has shot up. For example, during the last 50 years, the total investment of United Kingdom to Bangladesh is $2.5 billion. UK from the day one has been supportive of Bangladesh. And over 50 years, our cumulative investment is 2.5 billion. But within the last 5 years, UK's investment in Myanmar exceeded $2.3 billion. And that sounds very funny because they have been putting some sanctions on some generals. And same with most of the other countries. As per our estimate, as with the data, in the European Union countries, their trade and investment in Myanmar has gone up 3.5 times to 15 times in Myanmar since they committed this classic, this ethnic cleansing or genocide. So this shows that there are unwillingness among many of the leaders. But I must remind people that Rohingya issue is not Bangladesh problem. It is a global problem. When global leadership failed to come up to help them out, at that time, Bangladesh, out of humanitarian consideration, gave them a shelter. And therefore, global leaders should do more than what they are doing. In the UN, we also raised it to the UN Security Council. Unfortunately, there are some countries that opposed it, and therefore Security Council could not come up with any unified resolution on it. But we have seen in case of Kosovo, also in Somalia, that there has been regional powers that also maintain some, peacekeepers in this disputed areas, in these areas where there has been human rights violations. There has been coalition of governments, but and coalition of the friends, and that worked pretty well in many other parts. Unfortunately, in the case of Rohingya, no one is coming forward, and there is an apathy on it. So life in the camps, I have been requesting the UNHCR, UNDP, that they should do more in the Rakhine state, so that, because Myanmar is saying that if we bring them up, for first 3 months, there has to be some arrangement for food. Secondly, if they come, their houses has destroyed, so there has to have some housing. We are told by both India and Japan that they have built few housing, and also China, that they have built some housing in the Rakhine state. And therefore, the Rohingya, part of the Rohingya can go back, because they have many of the houses of these Rohingya are still okay. So there is scope for them to go to their own houses. But the question raised is, if they go, they don't have an economic activity. In this case, I request UNHCR and UNDP and in the global leadership that engage yourself with the Rakhine state and try to see that once they go, they are okay, and they don't face difficulty. Instead of putting more emphasis here in our Kotubalong camps and put more effort and create a conducive environment in the Rakhine state where they used to live. Anyway, unfortunately, whenever there has been refugees, the history is very poor. Currently, around 80 to 100 million people have been uprooted from their homes, have become refugees. Very few could return to their land of origin. But at times there has been some reallocation of refugees. We have requested our friendly countries that they should also look into it, whether they can relocate. In Bangladesh, it's a very densely, it's the most densely populated country. There is no room for additional people. Neither our economy can sustain, and there are many countries in the European where the density of population is very little, around 50 to 20. Even in USA is around 36 to 40, and therefore they have plenty of room. Now we need a mindset to help humanity. We often call about humanity and human rights, but right to live, right to have a living, right to have a decent living. These are, primary human rights, right to have an accommodation. And therefore, the leaders of the human rights, they should come forward and try to provide a decent living, a job, and an accommodation for these people in those countries where they can afford it, those countries where the density of population low, and those countries where there is plenty of opportunities and avenues. These people cannot be a lost generation. In Bangladesh, there are a large number of young kids, and we have also started providing them education under Myanmar curricula. Under the UNICEF, we have set up around 30,000 schools in the camps so that they get education under Myanmar curricula, so that once they return, they can be easily integrated in their societies. Now, it is up to the global leadership to come forward. ASEAN conference should be happening in the next month, and I would say the ASEAN we have made a proposal. We have made a proposal to Myanmar that because many of these Rohingya do not like to go to Myanmar because they don't trust the government, to create trust, to reduce the trust deficit. We requested Myanmar government, they should come, they should send their officials to the camps, and they did. Once they did, when they came, they were bombarded by these, the displaced people of Myanmar, forcibly displaced people of Myanmar, and since then they don't come back again. We also made a proposal to them that since they don't trust the military government, how about engaging non-military civilian observers in the Rakhine State from Myanmar's friendly countries like ASEAN, India, China, and let them monitor their safety and security. If that can happen, then these Rohingya will feel more comfortable to go back to their homes. So this is another proposal we have submitted. Now we have submitted to the ASEAN, and hopefully ASEAN should create a non-military force to monitor. Alternative is, as has done in other countries, there should be a coalition of the willing. If the UN failed to do anything, then there are countries, USA can take a lead of the coalition of the willing, so that their human rights of this Rohingya could be upheld, and they could go back to their land of origin. Otherwise, it would be a headache for not only for Bangladesh, also for this region, and everybody will suffer in the long run. And we feel bad that such a large number of human are being a captive, and we look forward to a better future. They can have a better future only once they go back. I thank the writers of this book and the publishers, for they have given a detail, even the future. And I was reading Mr. Ambassador Tariq Karim's article, and once he said, "What is the future?" Future appears to be, outlook for the future appears to be pretty bleak. And we should understand the reality. On the basis of that, maybe we can work together with all the agencies. There has been a tendency on some of the human rights groups for blame game. Instead of blame game, they should come forward to work together so that we can ensure human rights and safety of these persecuted people known as Rohingya. And with these few words, I commend the publishers and the authors, especially Professor Imtiaz Hussain. I didn't have much time to read it, but the few narratives that I have sent, and I like those, and it has revealed so many stories of the Rohingya, which could be useful in our discussions and dialogue. Thank you very much. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangla.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we echo with your comment that let's work together to solve this critical problem. And thank you for your well-articulated speech. We are encouraged by your presence and contribution to today's event. IUB is grateful to you for your valuable time and effort amid your very extremely busy schedule. Thank you, sir. Now, actually, we are, but okay, now is the time for making the closing remarks, and I am requesting Ambassador Retired Tarek Korim to come to the desk and make his closing comment.
Thank you very much, moderator, for giving me the floor. Respected Vice Chancellor, distinguished and honored guests on the podium, faculty, and students. I once again thank the Foreign Minister for having taken the trouble to have actually joined us online and spent so much time. It's a testimony to the interest that he has as an academic to such academic exercises and bringing that to bear on policy making. And I think he mentioned a few aspects of it. So much has been discussed threadbare about the book. This is a very holistic approach to looking at the multidimensional facets of the conundrum that we have been thrust into. And in a sense, it's a valuable contribution, as UNHCR resident representative, Mr. Johannes mentioned. It's invaluable because it gives the insight. Much has been written in our vernacular about the problem. There has been much cogitation about this problem in op-eds and editorials, but this is where it is factually researched, deeply researched, with a lot of information coming and actually opening up the grounds and ways to say, we need to find out more about why that happened and the way it happened. And I think that will be really, really useful. Ambassador Shabbir Hussain, my colleague, has said that it would be helpful for the foreign ministries. They have set up a policy planning cell, and also for the Foreign Service Academy. I would also say that because it's a book in English, it makes it especially relevant because there's a huge international audience out there which lives on half-baked facts. And it's coming from our perspective of how we see this problem. Of course, we see it much more closely because we are so deeply affected by it. I don't want to say too much. I just want to make 2 points. The past is never past. It is not even past. That's what Faulkner had said. And this is something which we tend to forget. Genocide, people being driven out of their countries or displaced from their homes or their livelihoods has happened. We thought it happened in prehistoric times, not in the times of modernity. Unfortunately, in the so-called age of modernity, and particularly after the so-called New World Order has come into being after 1945, we thought, okay, the Holocaust was the last such, the New World Order will not accept or permit such things to be repeated. But there have been numerous instances, and I'm sure the UNHCR is better aware than most of us. The foreign minister mentioned there are over 100 million refugees scattered all over the world. And this is a signal failure of the world community, and perhaps it's a collective responsibility. It's a collective responsibility because the weak cannot do anything in the face of indifference by the strong. Even though the International Criminal Court declared that Myanmar was guilty of committing genocide, the Myanmar government's reaction to it was thumbing its nose by the fact that it just placed before the firing squad several of the leaders who were protesting for their own rights. And these are Myanmaris. They are not ethnic minorities. Myanmar has several. Rohingyas are only one. They have 3 or at least 4 other ethnic minorities with whom they have been doing the same thing. So why this impunity? impunity happens because we allow it to sustain and persist. Impunity cannot happen if the global community get together to say, we will not allow it to happen. There is a price to pay. And the foreign minister's remarks that ASEAN has a signal responsibility because Myanmar takes refuge behind its membership of the ASEAN. ASEAN has a code of conduct among itself. It does not speak or criticize its own members in public. But I think it will force them now. It should force them now, whether it will or not, I don't know, time will tell. It should force them now to wake up to the fact that whatever happens in Myanmar and around it will not leave them unsinged, untouched. It's going to have consequences. Foreign Minister mentioned that we are very densely populated. It's not just Bangladesh, the whole region is very densely populated. And there are grave security issues, both traditional and non-traditional, which will flow out of this. And therefore, it's not a problem that we can keep closed. We are doing as much as we can within our resources. However, we alone cannot do it. So I congratulate Professor Imtiaz Hussain, and I thank all the authors who made such invaluable contributions to it. And I hope that this book will lend some solid research on which to base policy decisions or actions going forward. I thank all of you for being here today and being at this very important launch of the book. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you, sir, for your excellent speech. And we thank you for helping us in making this event a successful one. Before concluding, we will do a photo shooting here. Okay, so can we just sit and do the rest? Thank you.
So let us join for formally opening the book, book launch the book, yeah. Oh, sir. With this photo session, we are going to formally close today's session. And thank you very much for all of you joining. We have an announcement. We are requesting all of our guests to join us for the refreshment at room number 4044, Faculty Lounge. Our volunteers will guide them. And for all our students, please be seated here. Your refreshment will be given right after the room. So thank you very much for all joining. Thank you. Now,